2026 is shaping up to be a ridiculously wild year for the gaming world. But the list we're talking about today is not your typical this game is coming, that game is coming kind of list. Today we're looking at both the games expected to release in 2026 and the biggest projects that we expect to see gameplay trailers or major announcements for this year. If you're going to ask, you're hyped for this, or why did you even put this on the list? Drop it in the comments and we'll debate it. So this video is part list, part discussion, and by the way, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you're ready, let's jump into the list that's about to take over the gaming world. Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3. The final chapter of Square Enix's Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy is currently one of the biggest storms silently building in the gaming world, because Part 3 still has no confirmed release date, no gameplay, and not even an official title yet. But that silence only makes the hype even stronger. After where Rebirth left off, the story is no longer just a regional adventure, but is now standing on the edge of a planet-level catastrophe. In this final game, players won't just be deciding Cloud's fate, they'll be making choices that determine the fate of the entire world. Part 3's biggest strengths will be the massive map scale, free flight with the high wind, gigantic boss battles, and the action RPG combat system that has now become nearly flawless. The exciting part is this. Square Enix has zero room for mistakes here. Because this isn't just the end of a trilogy, it's the finale of one of the biggest modern JRPG projects in history. Players are no longer satisfied with just pretty cinematics. They want seamless gameplay blended into cinematics, more aggressive enemy AI, deeper materia combinations, and that legendary Sephiroth showdown. The moment the first real gameplay trailer drops, it's almost guaranteed that the internet will talk about nothing but FF7 for days. Hogwarts Legacy 2. After the massive sales success of the first game, this project is no longer just a sequel. It is now becoming the main RPG series of the Harry Potter universe. The priority Warner Bros. Is giving to this project clearly shows that the second game is being developed with a much bigger budget and a far more ambitious vision. The goal here isn't just to walk around Hogwarts again, it's to deliver a much deeper role-playing experience with a living school system, where classes actually affect character progression, dark magic has real consequences, and player choices fundamentally reshape the story. On the gameplay side, expectations are now crystal clear. Duels need to be faster, smoother, and far more cinematic. Players don't just want to cast spells and defeat enemies anymore, they want combos, counterspells, defense-offense, balance, and mechanically solid boss fights. Fully integrating Quidditch and making school life a core gameplay pillar rather than just decoration could turn this into one of the strongest fantasy RPGs of the generation. Resident Evil 9. The series is currently experiencing a true renaissance, and the next mainline entry is no longer just another Resident Evil. It is now seen as a turning point that will define where the horror genre is headed. Capcom's mastery of atmosphere with its modern RE engine needs to become much darker, far more claustrophobic, and much more oppressive in this entry. Players aren't just expecting jump scares anymore. They want a constant sense of threat, escape sequences that create real panic, and a survival loop where counting your bullets actually matters again. On the gameplay side, expectations are now very clear. Enemy AI must be smarter, and boss encounters must be more multi-phase and more systemic. Meaning that we shouldn't just defeat creatures by shooting them, but by interacting with the environment, setting traps, and choosing the right weapon at the right time. If Capcom nails that delicate balance between horror and action, this game could become a new benchmark not only for the series, but for the entire horror genre. Assassin's Creed Hexe. This project is flirting with a darker and more disturbing tone than the Assassin's Creed series has embraced in years, which means the experience we're about to get could be positioned far away from the classic climb the tower, clear the map, clean up missions loop. A medieval European setting centered on witch hunts, superstition, and paranoia could inject both horror and psychological tension into the franchise. That means this game could transform Assassin's Creed's familiar action-adventure identity into something slower, more oppressive, and much more stealth-focused. On the gameplay side, expectations are no longer just a new open world, but an entirely new rhythm. A version of Assassin's Creed where enemies can spot you at any moment, where hiding and tracking truly matter, and where mistakes come with heavy consequences. If Ubisoft takes risks here with smaller but denser regions, smarter enemy AI, and darker mission designs, this could be the long-awaited rebirth game for the franchise, God of War 6. After Ragnarok closed out a massive era of Norse mythology, the series is now facing its biggest question yet: what's next? Because this game will no longer be just another God of War, it will be a breaking point that redefines who Kratos is and who he will become. Moving into an entirely new mythology could completely reshape both the visual world and enemy designs. On the gameplay side, the bar is already extremely high, but now even more is expected. Melee combat will remain the heart of the series, but enemy AI needs to be more aggressive, and boss battles need to be more cinematic and multi-phase. More vertical maps, more hidden areas, and exploration designs that genuinely reward the player could turn this into not just a strong sequel, but one of the most ambitious action RPGs of the generation, Black Myth, Zhong. After the success of Wukong, this new project is preparing to reveal a much darker and more frightening side of Chinese mythology. Inspired by the legend of Zhong, this game puts the demon hunter theme at its core and promises a much more gothic tone, both aesthetically and atmospherically. Even in the first cinematic shown, you can feel that the game is aiming for a heavier, harsher, and more dramatic narrative. Which means this experience could pressure players psychologically, not only through its action, but through its storytelling and boss designs as well. On the gameplay side, expectations are no longer just Wukong, but with a different character. Players want more refined combat feel, clearer hit feedback, more aggressive but fair boss loops, and greater enemy variety. If the developers manage to make the systems more readable and balanced this time, Zhong could become not just a side project, but the beginning of a brand new action RPG legend. Star Wars KOTOR Remake. This project has been at the center of, is it dead? Is it canceled? Discussions for years, but here's the interesting part. Hope is still alive, and it's not a small hope. Because KOTOR isn't just a Star Wars game. It's one of the most beloved story experiences in RPG history. The biggest expectation for the remake is to rebirth that legendary story with modern visuals and gameplay systems that fit today's standards. The goal isn't just to polish the old, it's to make KOTOR truly playable and fluid for a new generation of players. The most critical gameplay question is this: will the turn-based tactical structure be preserved, or will it shift toward action RPG? Because that decision will completely define the game's identity. Players want to use Jedi powers more fluidly while also seeing their choices clearly impact the story. If the developers strike the right balance, this remake could become not just a nostalgia project, but the new generation's Star Wars RPG reference, Wolverine. This project has already become one of the most talked about next-gen superhero games, and it's not just because Wolverine is popular. Insomniac's proven mastery of action feel, animation quality, and storytelling clearly shows that this won't be just another Marvel game. The goal is to deliver a brutal, dark, melee-focused action experience that truly makes you feel Logan's wild and uncontrolled side. In this game, we won't just defeat enemies, we'll feel the impact of tearing, overpowering, and surviving. On the gameplay side, expectations are now extremely clear. The hit feel needs to be heavy, crunchy, and deeply satisfying. How the claws interact with the environment, how enemies react, how the healing system works, and how aggressive the boss loops are will define this game's fate. If Insomniac blends this brutal tone with strong cinematic storytelling, Wolverine could become not just a good game, but a new benchmark for the action genre. Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet. This new Naughty Dog project is one of the studio's long-kept secret weapons, and it's already being seen as the next big brand after The Last of Us. But the real point here isn't that it's set in space, it's that Naughty Dog is bringing its character, writing, cinematic presentation, and narrative pacing into a completely new universe. That means this game is preparing to deliver a heavy, emotional narrative experience that forces players to bond with its characters, beyond just being a sci-fi adventure. On the gameplay side, the biggest question is this: will it be action-heavy or more exploration and story-focused? Because in Naughty Dog's past projects, gameplay has always served the narrative. If that same philosophy carries over and the space theme is supported by unique mechanics, new traversal systems, and different enemy types, This could become not just a new IP, but one of PlayStation's next flagship franchises. Assassin's Creed Black Flag Remake. Even without an official announcement, leaks and insider information are practically screaming that the pirate theme is making a comeback. Black Flag earned its legendary status not just through its assassin story, but through its sense of freedom and open-sea adventure atmosphere. Experiencing that same feeling again with next-gen visuals, more realistic naval physics, and modern gameplay systems could be a dream come true, especially for players who've been starving for pirate-themed games. On the gameplay side, expectations are crystal clear. Naval combat must become far more tactical, boarding animations more cinematic, and ship progression systems much deeper. On the map side, players don't just want a massive open world, they want a living pirate universe where every island truly feels worth exploring, with non-repetitive missions and meaningful content. If Ubisoft treats this remake not as easy money but as a carefully crafted rebirth, this game could reclaim its title as the franchise's most beloved entry. Horizon 3. The third main entry in the series hasn't been officially announced yet, but the direction of the Horizon universe already makes its existence feel inevitable. The story doors opened at the end of the second game clearly suggested that Aloy will now face not just tribal conflicts, but a threat that could determine the fate of the entire world. That signals a third game that will evolve into something much bigger and far more dramatic in both narrative and scale. This is no longer just about open-world wandering, we're talking about massive wars, gigantic machines, and cinematic finale moments. On the gameplay side, expectations are no longer just better graphics. Smarter enemy AI, more complex machine designs, new weapon types, and more systemic exploration spaces are expected, making flight mechanics more meaningful, expanding underground and underwater areas, and ensuring side quests truly feed into the main narrative could turn this into not just a good sequel, but one of the generation's strongest open-world action RPGs. Atomic Heart 2. After the controversial yet unforgettable impact of the first game, this new entry is no longer a surprise experience, but a true sequel that must prove its universe. The retro-futuristic Soviet dystopia is preparing to return with much larger spaces, more side content, and a far more refined gameplay loop. While preserving the strong atmosphere of the original, serious improvements are expected in mission flow, pacing, and weapon feel based on player feedback. The goal here isn't just to return to the same world, it's to transform that world into a truly playable and sustainable universe. The biggest gameplay expectation is a heavier, more satisfying, and more systemic combat feel. Environmental interaction through abilities, increased enemy variety, and more diverse solutions in open-area missions will define this game's fate. If the developers manage to balance pacing and storytelling better this time, Atomic Heart 2 could become not just a good sequel, but a fully established major franchise. Far Cry 7. This franchise has been circling the same formula for a long time, and players no longer just want a new island and a new villain. This project could be a true turning point for Ubisoft because Far Cry will either reinvent itself or slowly lose its impact within the same loop. The real expectation here isn't map size, but giving players a genuine sense of freedom. Smarter enemy AI, a more reactive open world, and mission flows shaped by player choices could elevate this game to an entirely new level. On the gameplay side, expectations are now very clear. Clearing outposts must become more than just a task, it must become a tactical playground. Environmental traps, dynamic weather, wildlife that truly affects combat, and more organic co-op missions could turn this into not just a new Far Cry, but the Far Cry of the new generation. Here's what my 2026 looks like. Some of the games on this list will become legends of the year. Some will probably have people saying, wait, was this even known? But one thing is certain, 2026 is going to hit the gaming world hard. Now it's your turn. Which game would you put at the top of this list? Is there a game where you'd say you're way too hyped for this? Write it in the comments, let's debate, let's talk. And if you enjoy list-style videos like this, don't forget to subscribe and like. Because this series will continue, and see you in the next one.